In today's video, I wanted to discuss depth of field. More specifically, how it relates to the focal length of your lens and the distance from the subjects that you are shooting. Now, the reason I wanted to make this video is because I had recently seen somebody in a Facebook group that had an issue when taking a photo of a large group. They said they messed with their aperture, but they kept getting some subjects that were out of focus. And the problem came down to is that they were using an 85mm lens. They were shooting around a 5.6, but they were shooting at a closer distance than they should be, which was causing some of the other subjects to be just slightly out of focus. So I'm going to show some examples and kind of take you through how your focal distance and the distance from your subject affects your depth of field. Now, I think that most of us understand that the lower you have your f-stop or your aperture, the shallower your depth of field is going to be. Now, that also depends on what lens it is that you're using and that distance from your subject. So for today's examples, I'm going to be using a Viltrox 50mm 1.7 and a Fuji 85mm 1.2. For today's subjects, I'm just going to be using some medicine bottles. The reason I chose these is because I wanted the text on them. I want you to be able to see the difference in the sharpness of the text from the different lengths and the different aperture settings. And for today's camera that I will be using, it will be one of my Fuji X-T3s. All right, so we're gonna jump into Capture One where I've got some of these photos in here and some other examples. Now, first up here, the image that we're looking at, as you can see from the information below, I'm shooting with the 35mm, which is equivalent to a 50mm on the Fuji cameras. I'm at a 1.7, 1/125th of a second. I am focused in on this bottle here, and as you can see, we don't have very much sharpness to this one. That's going to be what you expect. The depth of field is very shallow at a 1.7 from the distance that I am shooting it at. Now, as I back away from this, let's get to the right one. As I back away from the bottles with the 35mm, shooting at a 5.6, you can see that we have the focus here, but we're still having a little bit of blur on this one. Now, the reason that is because the distance that I am actually shooting at. Now, as you can see here, here's a 5.6 shooting up even tighter. We're not getting the focus on this. This is not very sharp at all because the focus is all on this. Even though we're at a 5.6, we're sitting extremely close to the subject, so it is decreasing the depth of field on it. So in order to correct that, you have to be moving away from the subject. You need to leave a little room so that you can get the focus in on both of them. Now here I switched over to the 56mm 1.2. Again, on the Fuji systems, this is equivalent to an 85mm. Now I'm shooting very close here, and I am again focused on this bottle. Now, as expected, shooting at a 1.2 from a close distance, everything else is going to be pretty well blown out. You've got no focus on the bottle that is in the front. It is all on the one that is on the rear. Now, as we back away from it, still shooting at a 1.2, you can see how everything else starts to kind of come into focus. You can see this bottle a little more. And that's even shooting at a 1.2. And now here you can see, again on the 56mm, this is shooting at 5.6 up close to it. And you can see we still don't quite have the focus on this front bottle. All of the focus is on this rear bottle. Now, if you step away from it, it's going to clear up more. You're going to get more of the sharpness to it. But this is just another great example of even stopping down your aperture. When you're up close with more of a telephoto lens, like an 85mm, you're still going to miss focus on subjects that are not within that same plane. Now, if you step back further, you're going to get the focus in there because at that point, your depth of field is going to open up. So that's what you need to remember, is that the closer you are to the subject, especially with a lens like an 85mm or say even like a 105, which is going to create an even shallower depth of field, when you get closer up to them, it's going to decrease that depth of field. Even if you stop down to an f8, if you are very close to them, you're going to lose that depth of field. In reverse of that, even shooting at something like 1.7, 1.2, if you get further away from them, it's going to increase that depth of field. Let's jump back onto the screen. I will actually show you an example of that, shooting at an f1.2 from a good distance and still getting a great depth of field. Now here's a great example of depth of field when you're stepped away from your subject a little more. It's a shot at an f8, and as you can see, the main subject is completely in focus, and we're even getting stuff way back over here that is not sharp, but is a little more in focus. You can definitely see more of what's going on in the scene. Now, same shot, a little tighter with a 1.8. Again, you can clearly see everything that is going on in the background. It has not been completely blown out because of the distance that I am from the main subject and the background here. Now to change that up a little more, now let's show a different example. Here's an up close shot at 1.2. Now this is a fountain, and back here is just this kind of like stone part of the fountain. It's not very far from the little fountain itself, maybe a couple feet. So shooting at a 1.2, this background is completely annihilated. You can't see anything, and it is completely isolating the subject. Even the pipe that is in the front is starting to lose its sharpness. And then here is a great example of losing that depth of field because of how close I am to the subject. I'm shooting at an f8, but because of the distance I am to the subject, how close I am to it, it's still blurring out this background. Because again, I am closer to my subject, so it is decreasing that depth of field. So that's just something that I kind of want you to be able to visualize and see. Just remember that the closer you are to your subject, the more the background is going to be blurred out. Now, that can help you out a lot, especially people that are using a kit lens. Maybe you can't afford something like a 1.2 and you have a variable aperture lens that maybe only goes 3.5 to like a 4.5, 5.6. There's many different variations of them out there. I see a lot of people all the time saying that they can't create these photos because their lens isn't able to come down to a 1.8, 1.7, 1.2, whatever it is. But you very much can. It's just playing around with that depth of field by either coming into your subject more to force the depth of field to come shallower. So you can shoot, as I showed in that photo, you can shoot at an f8 and still have a blurred background. You just have to get a lot closer to your subject and be using a longer focal length lens. So if you have a telephoto lens that goes, say, 24 to 105, if you shoot at a 5.6 at around 85 millimeters, but you get closer to your subject, you're going to have that shallower depth of field. Now I'm going to demonstrate again here the forced depth of field. Right now I'm shooting at a 4.5 on this lens. I'm sitting around 50 millimeters on it. And the background from me is maybe about 4 foot, 5 foot to that computer screen. But you can see right now, it's pretty blurred out in the background, but my face is completely in focus. Now, I'm gonna step back to where I'm normally at. Now, as I come back over, you can see all of this is coming into focus. Everything around me is more in focus. That is changing that depth of field. So again, as I come up, we're going to lose the sharpness of that background, but keeping it here. So again, even if you're using a kit lens that is not allowing you to bring your aperture down to those lower 1.8, 1.2s, things like that everybody always says you have to have, that right there just shows you that no, you don't. As I said, I'm shooting on this at a 4.5 and I was still able to get that separation in the background. Now, if everything in the background behind me was even further back from me, it would be even more blurred out. So if you're doing a photo with somebody, say they're near a tree, and you want that tree to have more of that bokeh to it in the leaves, then what you're gonna wanna do is move your subject further from the tree and bring your lens closer to the subject. Then you will achieve that bokeh even shooting at a 5.6, 7.1, 8, whatever it is that you're gonna be shooting at. You will still get that, you just need to pull them away from the background. Now I hope that helps kind of explain some of that depth of field and how to get around creating that bokeh when you can't afford a 1.2 lens. You can still achieve it with a kit lens. You just need to understand that move them away from the background that you want to blur out and come closer to the subject. So I hope that helps you understand a little different part of depth of field in photography and even videography.